Good morning. How is everyone this morning? I'm not a morning person normally, but I feel great this morning, so must have been all that fun last night, right? Yes. So I'm going to start by having you all stand up. When everyone stands up. And now, what I want you to do is to turn to your left and look at the person to your left and say hello. And then turn to your right and say hello to the person on your right. And now I want you to think about this. According to the statistics today, 1 in 2, if you're a man, and 1 in 3 of you, if you're a woman, will be diagnosed with cancer in your lifetime. Shocking, isn't it? You can sit down now. Thank you for indulging me in that. The reason that I bring this up is because the fact of the matter is that in 1950, the year I was born, yes, I gave away my age. In 1950, the year I was born, 1 in 50 to 55 people was diagnosed with cancer. Isn't that a shocker? Now, what is causing this? There's a lot of factors. And the fact of the matter is, when years ago I wrote a book, several years ago I wrote a book called Instant Energy, which I talked about last year. And it was the 5 keys to unlimited energy and vitality. And I swore that 450-page book was the last book I would ever write. But over the past few years, I was reminded of my own journey with cancer, would you like me to share some of that with you today? Okay, I'll share that in just a few minutes. But I was reminded that, stress comes in many forms. But my belief has always been that the number one cause of illness today is stress. Number one cause. And I've had people argue with me over that, but after working in the health field for most of my life in one form or another, and especially in the last 30 years, I've worked with cancer as a result of going through the journey myself. However, before that, I worked with diabetes, I worked with renal disease, I worked with a lot of illnesses, and I saw the same issue, whether it was diabetes or renal disease or heart disease or cancer, stress, 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 stress. And today, we experience, on average, 200 to 300 stressors per day. Compare that to 1950, when the average number of stressors in one's life was about 10 to 12. Pretty shocking, isn't it? And people say, well, that's just North America. No, I've spoken around the world. That is global. And it doesn't matter if you're from an advanced culture or a less advanced culture, it's the same issue. Stress. And what happened for me was about 3 years ago, my life turned upside down. I lost someone very dear to me, my son. And I lost my home as a result of medical bills. And basically, I woke up to a nightmare rental situation after losing my home. And in that rental situation, I felt like I'd gone to hell in almost the same way I had when I was diagnosed with cancer in 1985. And I'll get to that in a minute. But what happened was that during that time, I had a nightmare dream. It was an actual recurring nightmare. Has anybody ever had a nightmare? A recurring nightmare? Yeah. I had this recurring nightmare, believe it or not, that I was being axe murdered by my landlady's son-in-law. Insane, right? But the truth of the matter was he used to enter my home whenever he felt like it. So I never had any privacy in my rental home. And this is after all those losses I just told you about. So what did I need most? I needed time and space, right, to recover. So I went through a lot of stress, but I walked down the stairs of my home after the third recurring nightmare, the third episode, and I looked at all my beautiful things, and I said, I heard the voice that said, you can't take it with you. You can't take it with you. And I thought, wow, this is not so good. I've worked my whole life to get all these things that I have in my life. How many of you have a lot of things that you really love and would find it hard to let go of? Anybody? No. Well, I had to say that at that particular moment, I had the epiphany that you can't take it with you, and it was time to let it all go. So basically, that's what happened. I decided that I was going to sell or give away everything I owned. So it started by putting everything out on the lawn and letting everybody who wanted to come and get it. And then I put the rest in storage and then started to sell the stuff or give it away. And I had another epiphany, by the way, that was a journey of 1,000 days, which I'm still going to be doing. And this where I'll travel around the world as a peace mission to bring people together regardless of race, creed, color, religion, or philosophy, and bring them together in peace through interviews. And is going to be looking at if you've lost someone, something, or everything you thought was important to you, you've come to that place of asking the question, what matters now? And that's what happened to me when I started to go through this process of giving away or selling everything I owned. What matters now? The only thing that really matters to me, and it's the only thing that's ever really mattered to me in my entire life, is peace on earth in our lifetime. And I want to leave a legacy worth remembering. How many of you can relate to that? Yeah, I kind of knew we were all in this together here. So that's what happened. It was like, creating or leaving a legacy of peace on this planet. Okay, so going back to the storage unit situation, what occurred was I started to have all these people coming in. Now, my journey was going to be after I sold and gave away everything, right? But what happened was while I was at the storage units every day, giving away my stuff, trying to sell some of it, I started meeting these amazing people. And they all had these incredible stories. And some of them, a large number of them, were actually military personnel who had returned from missions. And they would tell me stories of how they were out in the Afghanistan or Iraq or anywhere, even Vietnam, going back several decades, right? My era. And they would tell me stories of how they would hear bombs going off all day and all night. And then they'd get on a plane yesterday, and they'd arrive home today, and they'd be home with their family that afternoon. And they'd go to bed that night, and they'd hear bombs going off all day and all night. And the stress, the post-traumatic stress syndrome that they suffer with, it was just shocking. And so then, from there, I started to do more research and discovered that there are 26 suicides a day. 26 suicides a day. 25 veterans and 1 active duty commit suicide every day. That's up from 22 just 3 years ago. That's just in the military. Then we started doing more research. Who else is experiencing stress? Do you realize that the highest incidence of suicide in a profession is attorneys? Shocking, right? In the medical world, this was a shocker to me because I know that doctors and dietitians not so much, but a lot of doctors do commit suicide. However, the highest incidence of suicide in the medical world, can anybody guess? Dentists, right, exactly. High incidence. And people say, why? I really don't know yet. We've tried to interview several dentists to find out, and I haven't been able to get down to why. But the fact of the matter is that led us to go further into this and look at suicide around the world. Anybody guess how often a suicide occurs in the world? Every 30 seconds. Every 30 seconds. Okay, so what does that mean? What's that all about? Well, see, when I was looking at my own life, I thought I had a lot of stress over the last few years. But I found I'm one of those survivors who's a thriver. That's what people have called me over the years. So I'm the thriver. And what I've learned is that no matter what happens, you've got to find a solution immediately. Look for what you can do to alleviate the situation. And sometimes you'll fail, and that's okay because you fail forward, right? So what occurred, though, was that I started to look at, what's the cause of all this? Stress. Okay, so how could I help with this situation? I thought, well, the journey. But no, it was this, have you ever had that thing going off in your head that says, you gotta write the book? Anybody? Of course, we're all writers here. You got to write the book. Okay, so there I was. No, I'm not writing another book. The last book I wrote was Instant Energy, and that's it. I'm not doing another book. I was determined I wasn't going to do this book. But my business partner said, well, why don't you just take your little manual that you did for the FBI and various other organizations like that it was done in the 90s. Why don't you take that and just make that the book? Rewrite it. That sounded like a good idea, except that when I started to look at that little manual, 40 pages, big print, there was nothing there because my seminar was basically a manual I gave out to everybody that they filled everything in, and everything was on PowerPoint or whatever. Back then, I think it was overheads, right? And I had no overheads left because, remember, I'd just given away everything I owned. I had none of that left. Literally, I went to look for stuff, and it was like, okay, I don't have any of my books left. I gave away 157 cases of books to the local libraries. So I didn't even have my library anymore, right? So it was, okay. I guess it's back to the drawing board, right? So I started to put the ideas together. And interestingly, it's amazing how people come into your life, right? At a certain time when something's meant to be. How many people can relate to what I'm saying? Yeah, exactly. So Vicki was one of the people who came into my life. And it was amazing because as we started to work on this whole project, trying to come up with a title was a real challenge. What do you call it that nobody else has used already? Well, I knew one thing, that it was a formula, but I didn't really put that together until emailing back and forth with Vicki, and it was the Stress to Success formula. Fabulous. And then it was transform your life, career, and business now. And we had to include all that because military, right? That's a major market for us. The other market is professionals, so your career, and your business, entrepreneurs. How many entrepreneurs do you know that are stressed out? How many of you are entrepreneurs in this room? Have you ever been stressed out at all? Yes, exactly. So it was transform your life. And then I was out having lunch, and I'm still struggling. I've got all the steps down. I know my formula, but I couldn't figure out how to put it down into a formula in a book. And what happened was I was out having lunch with a businessman, a very, very successful entrepreneur who has a business in South America as well as up here. And he's in media. How appropriate, right? I just met the man. I'm telling him but he asked me what I was doing and why. The big why, Why are you doing it? And then we came down to this whole aspect of I was trying to use the word, now get this, stress as my acronym, because I'm a real acronym buff, right? I like everything to be in an acronym form so people can remember it. So I took the word stress and I said to him, I can't get this into the steps that I have. I have more steps than the word stress. And he looked at me and went, are you nuts? I don't want to be reminded about stress. Why don't you use the word transform? Now that would be really appropriate. And I thought, whoa, that's really interesting. Transform. I sat down at lunch, and within 5 minutes, All my steps were there. Transform. So much of what Randy talked about a few minutes ago is what was in there. I was looking at my book and going, is there anything new I can add here? But the point was that the word transform is the acronym for stress. The stress formula, pardon me. Stress to success formula. So, I will tell you about that in a minute. Do you want to know what the steps are? Yes. Okay. So I'll tell you about that in a minute, but I'd like to segue for a minute to the story of my own journey with cancer so that you understand a little bit more about the survivor to thriver aspect that led to actually going forward with this book. Because I'll tell you, it was that book, believe it or not, was more of a labor of love than instant energy, and I thought that was my, biggest labor of love ever. But this book, because I so wanted it to be a small book, not a big one, 450 pages, because everyone complained to me about the size of the book, especially young people, right? Nobody likes to read big books anymore, right? So when I would do interviews and ask people what size book, they said under 200 pages. Okay, fine. Figure out how to put this formula into less than 200 pages, because I like to talk a lot. You probably figured that one out, right? So anyway, that was the thing that came up there. So it was, okay, the stress book. So the realization was that I needed to share the same things that, yes, there's certain, the keys are in the instant energy book, but I needed to take it the next level and then simplify it, right? And I had to simplify it to the way that I functioned when I was overcoming cancer in the 80s. That was basically what happened. So what happened was in 1985, I was at the top of my field, top of my career. I was making extremely good money, possibly obscene, for what I was doing. I was up in Canada, that's where I lived at the time, and I was asked to speak at the Dietetic Association, which was in Saskatchewan that year. And normally, I was so busy raising my kids. I was a single mom, divorced mom with 2 kids, teenage kids. Anybody have kids? Maybe they're growing up now, but you remember the teen years? Anybody remember that? Yeah. So they were in the teen years, and so I was dealing with all of that. I was dealing with this extremely busy career, and I was asked to be the speaker, which was an honor, actually, with the Canadian Dietetic Association. So I was going to be the keynote speaker. And that was the first time I actually looked in the mirror for any length of time, because in the morning I was usually getting my kids ready for school and getting myself ready to go out to the job, right? And slapping on a little bit of makeup, and that was it. Anybody relate to what I'm saying here? Yeah. So that morning, however, I was taking a different kind of look at myself, because after all, I'm going to be on the big stage, right? 1,000 or 2,000 dietitians in the audience, my peers. Peers are scary, especially in the dietetic world. So I was thinking about that, and I'm looking in the mirror, and I see the spot under my eye that I'd had since I was a kid. I got hit with a hardball, baseball. So I had a blue bump, but it was nothing major, right? That day, it was purple, blackish purple, shiny and hard. I didn't know anything about what it was. I just knew it had to get off my face before I went and spoke. And that vanity took me to the doctor. Isn't that crazy? Vanity took me to the doctor. I go in and I say, can you get this off my face quickly? I'm going to be speaking at the Dietetic Association in Saskatchewan, and I need to get this ugly thing off my face. And the doctor said, how long have you had it? I said, well, like this, I don't know. He said, you don't know? I said, no, I have no idea. I had this bump since I was a kid, and I just noticed it now. And he said, this could be serious. Now, I was working with a lot of chronic illnesses, as I mentioned, diabetes, heart disease, some cancer. But it was mainly what we used to call cancer of the aged versus cancer of the youth, right? Certainly no skin disease or skin cancer. So the doctor did a biopsy, and they discovered that it was melanoma. Early stage. What I learned was that melanoma goes deep fast. So I was blessed, truly blessed, that we got it early. But now let's take another look at what was happening. For about 2.5 years, I was also going through what the doctors called PMS. Now, when I was in Russia a few years into the cancer journey, an elderly woman said to me, because I was kvetching about being diagnosed with cancer at such a young age, she said, "Yep, PMS, they got you right on. Pissing and moaning syndrome. That's you." Well, thank you very much, but I thought I had a right to at that particular point in time. Anyway, basically what occurred was that I had been dealing with what the doctors call PMS for 2.5 years, and it was crippling and at this point. And so what happened was right after I was diagnosed with melanoma, I was doubled over with pain and rushed into hospital, and they discovered that I had stage 4 uterine cancer. I was only 35 years old. I had worked with people in their 70s and 80s who were diagnosed with uterine cancer, stage 4, but never seen anybody young with it. Also, with respect to that, it is hereditary for me. 2 of my great aunts died from uterine cancer, stage 4. However, they were more than double my age when they were diagnosed, right? So you literally could have knocked me over with a feather when I was told I had uterine cancer. Because in my mind, what did I think it was? After what I saw in my family? A death sentence. And so I was in the medical world, and the doctor said, chemotherapy, that's it, chemotherapy. Back then, chemotherapy wasn't what it is today. And I'm not an advocate for chemotherapy or radiation, but however, I don't tell my patients what they should or shouldn't do. They have to choose what they're going to do as long as they have all the facts in advance. So what I do is I sit down with my patients and I have them write out all the questions together with me that they're going to ask their doctor. It's one of the major services I provide with my patients because no one did that with me, and I ended up going through 3 devastating experiences with chemotherapy. It was bolus chemotherapy that almost killed me. After 3 rounds of it, my kids and I sat down and we decided that was it. We're done. If I die, I'm going to die naturally. How many of you can relate to what I'm saying here? Yeah. And I would feel the same way today, I'm sure, if perchance anything happened that I was diagnosed with cancer again. Anyway, I went through between 1985 and 1990 5 bouts of cancer. Twice with melanoma, 3 times with uterine cancer. And in 1989, after trying everything, I quit the chemo. And I did what every good patient does. I started searching for every alternative care that existed on the planet. And back at that particular point in time in Canada, there weren't many really alternative treatments available, other than what you saw in the medical field, because of the type of health care they have. However, today it's a totally different story. There's a lot of alternative care up in Canada, as well as down here, down in Mexico for sure, and in California and in the States. However, after all of that, going in and out of the cancer experience, I found myself 88 pounds, given less than 2 weeks to live in 1989. So this is the ghost of Marilyn Joyce Past, here to talk to you. No. This is the real deal. I'm here, and I'm a 27 plus years survivor. And basically what occurred was that I looked at what it was that got me well. And believe it or not, it was 5-minute strategies. That's what I'm known for. I'm called the master of 5-minute healthy strategies that anyone can do anywhere, anytime. And so these steps in the transform are very, very simple. Number 1 is time out. Nobody seems to take time out. And it doesn't have to be long. 5 minutes will do it. And when you do it, it's to take the time to breathe deeply. Exhale fully out 3 times, and then begin to breathe in slowly to a count of 4. Hold to a count of 4, and release to a count of 4. Now, I would do all of this with you, but I've only got a few minutes left here. So that's the first one, time out. And why is that so important? Because if you don't take time out, you cannot have the second part of this, which is the R, rest, relax, and rejuvenate. We need to get rest. I am probably one of the most guilty for not getting enough sleep, because I feel like it's a waste of my life to sleep for too long. But if you don't rest, relax, and rejuvenate, you can't heal your body or prevent illness. The A is for attitude of gratitude. If you don't have gratitude, and I love that idea of writing a note every day, that's one of my processes, is to either send a message to someone by text or a written note or a Facebook message, something like that, right? It's a great practice. The N, what do you think that's for with my background in dietetics? Nutrition excellence daily. Not weekly, not monthly, and not January 1st. Daily. Okay. Then we come to the S, which is social connections. And according to all the research done with the blue zone areas where people live over 100 years of age successfully and healthfully, social connections is by far their most important aspect of living. I have a whole section on that, by the way, in the book Transform, the Stress to Success formula, pardon me. Then we come to the F, and that is follow your heart. The biggest lesson I learned in my cancer journey was that I didn't follow my heart. I never did things that I wanted to do. I did things that I thought I should do, right? What other people thought I should do was what I did. Follow your heart. And then we come to the O, offer a helping hand to anybody that you can. I have tons of ideas about how to do that easily, quickly, but it's just about offering a helping hand. So that's the O. Now we have another R. Oh my goodness, what would that be? What do we not do in our busy lives? Rejoice our successes and the successes of others. The R. And then we come to M. How many of you have heard of mindfulness meditation? The interesting part is you don't have to meditate to be mindful. It's just being mindful throughout everything in your life. You have a conversation with someone. Are you mindfully listening to them as they're talking? Are you mindfully being present so that their energy and yours fuse? So that's transform your stress into success. Does that sound like an easy plan? Yeah. There's a lot of practices and so on that are, practices, et cetera, that are in there. But I just wanted to give you the taste of that and a little bit of the journey with the cancer. As you can see, my journey with cancer was what brought me to here today, to write that book, and then to take it out to the world. And so it's kind of the platform for the next step called the Journey of 1,000 Days. And I just want to thank you so much for allowing me to share that story with you today and the Transform formula. Thank you so much.
What a great journey it's been. This book has been such a joy. And Marilyn has a wonderful gift. It's a complete mentoring session with her. Not a session, but it's actually a whole mentoring program.
Yes, it's one full month of counseling and coaching and mentoring. And you have your choice of what it would be, whether it's for stress or overcoming cancer, or if you're a caregiver who needs to take care of yourself. and is worth $2,000.
Okay, so we are going to draw a lucky winner here. Okay.
All right.
Is there any way to get lights up here on stage? Turn the lights up. Tracy Webster. Oh, and they missed their flight, so she is not here. So it'll be someone.
Okay, here we go.
And for all of these wonderful awards, you do have to be present to win. So.
This one is.
Oh, and she's not here either. Now. Okay.
All right.
Third's a charm, right?
Yes, third's a charm. Here we go. All right. Okay.
Rhonda? Is she not here now? Okay, well,
Wow. Okay.
all these people sleeping in.
Okay, here we go.
Nancy Butler? There you go, Nancy. Anybody get a picture? Fabulous. Oh, I'll come in. Okay, congratulations. And we have a second mindfulness award, and I'm thrilled to dedicate this award to this amazing woman who helps people and has for years, just selfishly all over the world. So thank you. Thank you for being you and all that you do. Again, it's an hourglass, not that you need a reminder. And another little gift for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much, Vicki. You are just a treat. Just adorable treat.